For this exercise sheet, we focus on creating interesting rhythms while improvising. Although I'll be applying these ideas to some Dorian mode exercises, we can use the same concepts in many other situations. A very common way to keep track of rhythm is to number the beats in a measure. So for 2/4 time, we would say 1, 2, 1, 2. And to subdivide the beat into eighth notes, we get 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and. No matter how we count, it's important to keep a steady beat in both slow and fast tempos. I would encourage you to use a metronome or a backing track if you're practicing alone. The first part of the exercise sheet lists various rhythms with eighth note subdivisions. I suggest that you practice these counting out loud at slow, medium, and fast tempos, repeating each section several times. For example, for the first line, we tap or play on one note like this. 2, 1, 2, 1 and 2 and 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 1 and 2. So that was with the metronome set at 60. Now let's move it up to 80. 2, 1 and 2 and 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 1, so forth. Now we'll move it up to 100. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1 and 2 and 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 so forth. And you can play a game to see how fast you can play it and keep the rhythm steady, keep it accurate. Of course, we're going to want to play more than just one note, so at the bottom of this sheet, starting at measure 17, I've written out notes from the F Dorian scale in 2 different 5-finger positions. I'll play without repeats the first 2 lines. 1, 2, 1 and 2 and 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 1 and 2. Now I'd like to move on to improvising on a folk song in the Dorian mode. I've written out Scarborough Fair in 2/4 time using only eighth notes. Here's what it sounds like. And so forth. Now let's see if we can make this a little bit more interesting. In the first 2 measures, I've X'd out 3 of the eighth notes, and those are going to be replaced by rests. In the third bar, I'm getting rid of the first E and moving the bar line over, and the result is, at the end of the bar line, we'll have a little bit of a syncopation. Here's what it'll sound like. 1, 2, 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and. You can see what this looks like in standard notation beginning at measure 49. I've also made some other rhythmic variations and written them out below. Finally, I'd like to call attention to the performance suggestion, swing eighths. Sometimes, instead of playing straight eighth notes that divide the beat into 2 equal parts, the situation calls for swing eighths, which are basically triplets. For example, the first line played in swing eighths would sound like this. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, a 2, a 1, a 2, a 1, a 2, a 1, a 2. You get the feeling of triplets because the first of the eighth notes takes up about 2/3 of the beat, and the last eighth note takes the remaining 1/3. Swing eighths are not required, but they're always an option, especially at a slow tempo. Here's the whole variation played with swing eighths and a simple accompaniment. I had fun doing this, and I hope you also enjoy making your own rhythmic variations.